Oh, no, I was going to say if you want to see.
No, do.
All right, well, good morning. Yeah, good morning. You guys are awake? Good. Yeah, well, welcome to the Faith Pavilion. And I'm excited to give a presentation this morning about loving your city. During this session, I want to first introduce myself and then the model of Love Your City. That is 5 steps for faith communities to be engaged in their city and to serve their local communities. And so my name is Jacob Bloemberg, and I'm from Holland originally, but I'm a pastor of an international church in Hanoi, Vietnam. And I believe that faith communities are uniquely positioned to implement the new urban agenda locally, together, and now. This is a picture I took just last week off of the balcony of my apartment building. My wife and I moved to this apartment during COVID, a brand new building and a brand new apartment in a brand new neighborhood with a very nice park in front. But much of the year, we actually cannot see much further than the buildings across the park because the air pollution is so high. Last week, Hanoi was the 3rd highest polluted city in the world, and sometimes it's been at the highest. Vietnam has been developing very quickly. Today, 40% of the population in the nation live in cities, and that has come at a great cost for air quality. Now, that is just one issue that is facing our developing cities. There are many more issues that are challenging in our urban context that we know of. Well, for me, I came to Hanoi in 1997, and it was 10 years after living in the city that I personally experienced a paradigm shift. I had been reading a book that was called Theology as Big as the City by Ray Bakke. And as I was driving my motorbike through the city, I suddenly just dawned on me. I had this paradigm shift while riding motorbike, which is actually quite dangerous in Hanoi. But it just suddenly I realized, wait a minute, my faith is speaking to the whole city, and not just to what I'm doing. In fact, my scriptures have a vision for the whole city. And I realized I was using the city for my work, and I wasn't necessarily working for my city. And that to me became a paradigm shift. And so I want to share some of my learning since then, which I captured in my book called To Love Your City. And this book, I describe 5 steps to local action. In fact, my title is 5 Steps to Citywide Movements. But I'm using today the 5 steps and reframing it in the theme of WUF12. These 5 steps are principles, posture, process, partner, and people. And I believe that faith communities are locally rooted, and typically they are volunteer run. So they are so uniquely positioned to generate volunteerism in our own local communities. And so when faith communities love their city, I believe cities increase in their resilience. And this model aligns very closely with the WUF12 theme, because it all starts at home, and there's nothing closer to home than our faith, the things that we believe and hold dear in our hearts. And if our faith inspires our actions, it's also shared with our family, our home. And then when it's lived out in our community, we put these things into action. And that's why it starts locally. Faith communities are rooted in our local community. And we are called upon as a faith community to love and to serve our neighbors, even at our own cost. And therefore, it all starts together. Faith communities can join hands across boundaries. And it all starts now. When many hands do many small actions, we make a big impact. Today I want to use Love Hanoi, which is a citywide network in Hanoi City, to illustrate this Love Your City model. Love Hanoi was started as a campaign by my church 12 years ago in 2012. And this campaign and this paradigm shift completely transformed me. It's changed me, who I am and what I do, how I think. And also changed our congregation from being inward focused to becoming outward focused. And it also has changed the Christian community in our city. And now churches citywide are starting to put this into practice in their own local communities. And we have started to inspire churches across the nation in other cities as well. And so this campaign has had a dramatic impact in the improvement of church-state relationships. And considering Vietnam as a communist country, that says a whole lot. And I'll share some of the examples from Love Hanoi throughout my presentation as an illustration of these 5 steps. But before I do that, I want to introduce my family, because I'm not on my own and I'm not who I am without my wife and my family. And so from the left to the right, on the left is my oldest daughter, Liana. She was 3 years old when we arrived in Hanoi. So that was 27 years ago. And behind her is her husband, David. And then next to Liana is my wife, Linda, from Pennsylvania, the US. And we met and married in Amsterdam. And then next to her is my youngest daughter, Michaela. She is just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And last May was her master's graduation. And she chose to use the Vietnamese flag, the country of her birth, rather than the 2 passport countries that she has. And then next to her is obviously myself from Holland, and my son Josiah, who was 1 year old when we arrived in Hanoi. And all 3 actually, coincidentally, are living now on the East Coast in the USA. But we first came to Hanoi to serve with the government in a local children's home in the Dong Da district of Hanoi City. And the NGO that we worked with provided sponsorship for each of these children. And my wife, because she was a social worker, was qualified to be the administrator on behalf of our organization. And I, because of my vocational background, was teaching vocational training, particularly teaching computer skills and design. And through this, we had first-hand experience that really shaped our passion for loving Hanoi and loving the city, as well as for collaboration, both with the local government, with nonprofit organization that supported our project, with businesses that helped us out, and with the faith community that we are part of. And the children now, today, they all are grown up. They have their own children who are now grown up. They have families and they have jobs and they have communities of their own. And it's just been satisfying to see that happen. Well, this is my church called Hanoi International Fellowship, or HIF for short. It's a truly multinational, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-denominational. I just call it a multi-everything church. And so we don't like to be pinned down on too much. You can see it's so diverse in our congregation. People from every walk of life and every nationality, also of various statuses, being diplomats, ambassadors, heads of corporations and international organizations, many staff from World Bank or the UN or UA or the EU, but also many teachers. Almost half of our congregation are teachers in Hanoi, whether it's with international schools or with local schools. And our church was founded in '95 before we arrived, and I became the pastor in 2005. So nearing 20 years now. But until 2014, we were not allowed to have Vietnamese to participate in our congregation. But in 2012, I started to develop a relationship with the local government and the local police. And in 2014, when I asked if Vietnamese could attend, they gave us permission to have Vietnamese attend our church. And that was quite a breakthrough. And I believe it was because of our posture of loving Hanoi. And so just to give you a bit of a context of the religious context for Vietnam then and now, back in 2004, they had an ordinance on religion and belief, and it wasn't until 2018 that a law on belief and religion was implemented that gave also freedom for foreigners to have congregations in Vietnam. Until then, we actually on paper were not legal, even though we existed. Then there were only 6 religions that were legal in Vietnam. Today there are 16 religions and 43 religious organizations, of which 16 are Protestant denominations that are registered in Vietnam. In '95, my church was founded. In 2019, soon after the law was implemented, we were able to register as a congregation in Hanoi. And 2012 then is when HIF launched the Love Hanoi campaign. And today we have a very positive relationship between church and government. I call them my friends. But when our church started Love Hanoi, I had read stories and heard stories about such activities in other cities around the world, especially in the US. And I'm like, we cannot do this in Hanoi. But when we started, I'm like, I have no idea what we're doing. And I have no idea how to go about it. So I pursued a doctoral degree with Baki Graduate University, from which I graduated in 2019. And my thesis was the role of the evangelical church in the transformation of Hanoi City. And so Love Hanoi became my thesis project. And it's through this research that I developed the 5-step model to mobilize faith communities for local action. And this model has been tested, it has been refined, and through the Love Hanoi network. And it's become a catalyst for faith communities to have local actions. And so it's my personal commitment to activate faith communities, to serve in their local neighborhoods, and together to love our cities. And this has truly been a personal journey. So these 5 steps are not just theory. It really was my personal journey that then became our church's journey, that then has become the journey of the churches citywide in Hanoi. And it's an invitation from me to you as faith leaders to consider how your faith is informing you to become a catalyst for change in your city. And so I want to introduce the 5 steps of my Love Your City model with examples from the Love Hanoi movement. And the first step is principles. How we can establish faith-based values for our cities. You know, it's very critical for faith communities to establish their actions upon their sacred writings. Because strongly held beliefs is what is driving the resilience of cities for long-term impact. And for me, developing a vision for cities is based upon the scriptures that we use in our Christian tradition. And that first caused a personal paradigm shift for me that then also activated our church. And therefore I encourage all faith leaders to develop faith-based principles first. And this really connects to the WUF theme for this year. It all starts locally. Faith-based values provide a strong foundation for local action. The cities can benefit from engaged faith communities when they are driven by their shared values. And these principles shape how we serve our neighborhoods. Faith communities can thrive when they are acting on their core convictions. Discovering faith-based principles become a catalyst for local action. And so, for example, for my faith tradition from the scriptures, this phrase from the prophet Jeremiah is what inspires many believers worldwide to seek the peace and to pray for their cities. In Jeremiah 29:7, it says, "Seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to the Lord for it, for in its peace you will have peace." And this peace is the Hebrew word shalom, and shalom is an holistic peace. It's seeking the welfare, seeking the wellness, seeking the wholeness of all of life. In other words, we seek the wholeness of our city so that our cities and our communities can flourish, and so that we ourselves will benefit when our cities are flourishing. For me, I found it very helpful to research my own scriptures to create a framework for a theology of the city. First of all, a kingdom perspective that seeks how God's justice and peace is implemented for our cities. And then shalom peace calls for a holistic well-being across our urban life. And then thirdly, a theology of place creates spaces for communities to thrive. And then within that, we can shape cities, and we can see that cities are actually central to God's presence and His purpose all the way from the beginning to the end. And so these rooted beliefs can drive faith communities to seek the peace of their cities. Now, Love Your City, one of the things that we do is to cast this kind of faith-based vision for faith leaders. And typically, faith leaders, they're primarily concerned with their own members of their own communities. And so it's very easy for faith communities to become very internally focused on the needs of their own members. And they need to have this introduction to faith-based values for their cities to experience a paradigm shift themselves. We first must be transformed personally before we try to bring transformation in our local communities. And so we need to have this mindset change before we have a change in our posture, in our attitude towards our community, and we get into action. Secondly, Love Your City is providing what we call the City Catalyst training for faith leaders. And typically, these skills and these tools are not part of what religious leaders learn when they go and study to become a religious leader or clergy or priest or pastors. But I believe that every faith leader really should be equipped to mobilize their own congregation to love and to serve their neighbors. And that is step one, principles. We must begin with faith-based values to equip faith leaders so that we can activate faith communities to seek the peace of their own cities. And that then leads to a change of posture, which is step two. Because if we have a closed mind, how can we ever open our arms to embrace our communities? And so when our religious writings and our beliefs tell us that we should love our city, then we also must embrace humility, and we must open up towards collaboration. We must move beyond our own walls to serve with open hearts and with open hands. Because if the welfare of all people is at the center, we actually can work with anyone. And that aligns with WUF's theme of it all starts together. Because faith communities can thrive when we join hands for the betterment of our local communities. This collective action can actually strengthen the resilience and social unity of our cities. And collaboration enables more impactful and lasting solutions. This requires a change in our own personal posture and the posture of our faith communities, from being closed to becoming open, so that together we can actually seek the welfare for everyone in our cities. And this truly is a paradigm shift from being bounded set thinking to centered set thinking. We have to move from going to a city and doing things for the community to being and serving with the community and the city. You know, some faith communities, they just see themselves as being better than everyone else. But we have to really think, they think, oh, we should go to that poor community and that poor city and let's do things for them. And then they do this activity and then they come back home and they feel good about themselves because they've done something for other people. But we have to change this kind of paradigm. We have to do better. Instead of just going to and doing so for, we have to live in and be part of and then work with the city. One example, early on in the WUF12 Hanoi, we partnered with a local initiative called Keep Hanoi Clean. And they worked with the local authorities of a small commune called Fuxa. And this commune was underserved. They had no trash collection. So the local residents were always dumping their trash near a sewage outlet that led into the Red River. And 140 volunteers collected 14 tons of trash in one weekend. That was a true community transformation. And we left behind a cleaner and safer environment for the local residents. But then, interestingly enough, during 2020, during COVID, this local community asked if we would be willing to sponsor a playground on that same location. In fact, the community had continued to keep that location trash free, had put down a cement floor on that site, and then they could not afford the playground. And so, working with an international NGO and working with the local Communist Youth League, we placed this playground on that very location where we had collected trash before. And even though our church, did not allow us to put our church logo on the banner because of the local sensitivities and working with the Communist Youth League, we could put the Love Hanoi logo on the banner. And to us, it doesn't matter. It's really not about if we get credit or not. It's really about the welfare of the community. Because together we can love Hanoi. And now in 2 weeks, we are going back to the same neighborhood and cleaning further down the river lots and lots of more trash. And we're now busy recruiting 200 volunteers for the weekend to clean up the trash down river. And that leads us to step 3, because changing a city is a process and not an event. We need to focus on structuring our initiative for long-term impact. You know, often we see activities as a one-time event, but community transformation is truly a long-term process. So this organized process needs to turn our passion into sustainable change. And this is a step-by-step engagement that builds relationship and it builds mutual trust. And this process is truly essential to adapt to ongoing urban challenges. And this really resonates with WUF's theme, It Starts Now. Because there's an urgency. You know, there's no time to waste, literally. We cannot do everything all at once. There has to be a process to our activities. And this structured response, are responses can, in fact, prevent future crises. Our immediate action translates our vision into tangible change in local communities. And faith communities can play a unique role in catalyzing action now. And this process I adopted from the Christian Community Development Association, which starts with involvement. First, a faith community needs to decide, are we getting involved with our local community? Often they have not made that kind of decision. And so that's the first step. They need to make a decision. We are coming into action. And then they need to analyze their own context, analyze the needs and the existing resources in their community before they craft a vision and a concept, a dream, designing together a future that is better. Based on that vision, they can come to create a plan of action, developing a detailed implementation plan to mobilize people and to mobilize the resources that they need before they can get started. And then after the action, they need to evaluate and celebrate. Often, in fact, the CCDA left out celebration in this process. They only do evaluation and then go to the next thing. But we need to pause and celebrate what we have done together and to build on that mutual trust before we continue. One illustration of this long-term process is the recent Typhoon Yagi that blew through the Asia Pacific and really devastated North Vietnam. It claimed 233 lives, leaving countless of families in crisis at early September. And Love Hanoi, as a network of churches in Hanoi, mobilized 150 volunteers to distribute supplies, including 235 bags of clothing, 703 packs of food, and 10,000 packs of water disinfectant powder. We had 22 relief teams that spread out throughout North Vietnam that worked across 8 provinces to bring immediate relief. And 36 families received financial help to support the funeral for the loss of their loved ones. But now we are in phase 2, and this is recovery, rebuilding homes for 48 families, relocating 150 families from landslide-prone zones, and renovating 10 damaged chapels for their community worship. And this stage, we are focusing on families that have elderly, that have children, and that have single mothers. And we are also engaging local contractors and communities to participate in the reconstruction of homes. And that this establishes systems that can ensure transparent monitoring of these projects. But then this is a long-term process. And so stage 3, which will be next, will focus on revitalization of those communities that have been impacted. And this will go well into the coming year. We will launch training for sustainable livelihoods that develop their initiatives for revitalization. We will focus on skill training like farming and livestock and handicrafts training. We will provide support for local families to achieve their own economic stability and establish partnerships for job creation and skill development. And the total budget of phase 3 is just over $100,000, and we are looking for partners to join us in this long-term process. And that brings us to step 4, partnering, to build multi-faith, multi-sector alliances. Because our faith-based principles not only lead to an open posture and a structured process, but those 3 steps set us up to partner across all kinds of boundaries. We build on this multi-faith and multi-sector alliances for the peace of the cities that we serve. And these partnerships can then maximize the impact by pooling all our resources together. But this is truly a challenge for many faith leaders because they have to release the power that they hold. They have to release the people in their community. They have to release the pennies that they hold in their budgets. Uh, often we are asked the question, why should we serve? And why should we share our limited resources of our faith communities to serve people outside of our community? But that brings us to the WUF theme, that we are stronger together. As we heard yesterday, the world is lagging behind in accomplishing the global SDGs, particular SDG 11. And so our partnerships need to bridge the global agendas with local communities. And collaboration between the public and private and non-profit sectors, which include the faith-based communities, provide whole of society solutions. And I believe that faith communities play a unique role in mobilizing volunteerism, especially when it comes to serving those who are at risk in our cities, at risk of being left behind. And this is where this model of citywide networks is very helpful, that we in Love Your City utilize to network our cities, to create partnership projects to serve for a broader impact in our societies. And so we have churches and charities, companies and civic institutions, and this forms the backbone to our city networks. And then our network provides a platform for connecting and for engagement with our city and with our neighborhoods. Then out of these connections form partnerships that then design projects that serve the different segments of our society. Love Hanoi, we often do cleanup projects. And in response to our cleanup project that we did last year, the city police afterwards said, we want to do a cleanup project together. Let's do one between all the churches and the city police. And let's clean up a park together. And so this project last year was right before Christmas. And so they said, let's do one right before Easter. So the next time I met the director of the Religious Affairs Office of the City Security Police, he said, let's not just do it with the churches, let's invite all the other religious leaders. And I said, oh, that would be great. And so then the next time we met, we had a meeting at the City Police office, and we were sitting together with the Catholic, the Buddhist, the Baha'i, the Huahao, and the Church of the Latter-day Saints together. And the person from the City Police in charge said, hey, this is Pastor Jacob's idea. In fact, it wasn't my idea. It was the director of the City Police idea. But anyway, they said, this is my idea. And we have been doing this for many times, so my staff can organize it. And he said, what if we, instead of putting all the religious logos on the banner, but what if we just put the Love Hanoi logo on the banner so that we are united under Loving Hanoi? And so here we are with all the different faiths represented in Hanoi and the city police on that Saturday cleaning up a local park. And on the banner is the city police logo and the Love Hanoi logo. And this was the first multi-faith initiative in our city. Thank you. Yeah, that's truly worth applause. Another example is a lady called Uyen. And Uyen had a real passion to do something about recycling because Hanoi doesn't have a centralized recycling process. Everything goes into the trash. The trash is shipped out of the city, and then there's an informal recycling process done by hand of people that pull out the recycling from the trash and try to resell it. But now Wien is trying to implement in apartment buildings and office towers to collect recyclables such as batteries and plastics and send it to recycling centers that generate products out of the plastics. And so her project is called Live Green. And she now has a recent drive. She was able to collect 100 kilos of plastic and 20 kilos of batteries. And her partners are an insurance company and another recycling initiatives and our church, HIF. And then a third example from our Love Hanoi community projects is now that we started last year, an annual community serve day. And so coming up on November 16, we will have our second annual serve day. And here we are organizing as many projects as our community can organize, trying to mobilize more and more faith communities to serve outside of their church locations and to serve their local neighborhoods that include various cleanup projects in different districts, preparing Christmas boxes for children in children's homes, working with NGOs, making tactile books for visually impaired children, holding a Christmas party for people who are cancer patients or who are in the last stage of life, working together with a hospice center. And these are just some of the examples of the different projects that we'll be doing just 2 weeks from now. And that leads us to step 5, because loving our city ultimately it's all about people, organizing people to serve people. At the end, it's all about people. And we seek to empower not just leaders, we want to empower everyone for change in our city. And to do so, Love Your City uses what we call the 7 domain framework to equip and to organize individuals from the various sectors of society, which is health, education, business, nonprofit, culture, and government. And that very much aligns with the theme from WUF this year, that we are putting people first. We want to maximize the benefits of technology, but we need to remain people-centric. Now in Vietnam, the average person has 1.4 mobile phone subscriptions. And so most people have more than one mobile phone subscription. And in fact, 3/4 of the population have a smartphone. And all of these people use the same local social app called Zalo. It's a Vietnamese social app. And so we utilize Zalo as a technology to create groups around issues, around networks, and around the different sectors in our society to organize our Love Hanoi community. And so these are the 7 domains: business, education, family, healthcare, nonprofit, culture and arts, and governance. And just before COVID hit, I'd asked my Love Hanoi director at that time to create a report based on these 7 domains so that we can understand our city. And so she researched what do our scriptures have to say about each of these sectors. Then what are the issues and the statistics of these sectors in Hanoi from our local government information and data. And then based on that, she generated this report. So it starts off with some basic information about Hanoi, and then what does the Bible say, and then what are the facts about healthcare, for example, what are Christians already doing in the healthcare sector, and then what are the opportunities and the challenges for the Christians in the future. And so we now have this 120-page report that really explores all the opportunities of how faith-based communities can serve these sectors in our city. And one example is how our healthcare network has formed a partnership to create a new institution that did not exist before. The Christian Medical Fellowship of Vietnam, which was based on the Christian Medical Fellowship in Korea, and that's a global network. When they heard this vision of loving your city, realized that instead of just having fellowship among each other, that they actually together could do greater things than what they could do by themselves. And so, inspired by this vision, they decided to provide a service that did not yet exist in Vietnam, which is hospice care. In fact, there is no Vietnamese word for hospice care. It did not exist before. And so they together now formed what is called the Spring Hospice Center, with a vision to have a building as a clinic to provide on-site care. But for now, they are providing the hospice palliative care to late-stage cancer patients at home and visiting them at home. And this is the first of its kind hospice care in Vietnam, formed by our Christian Medical Fellowship. Another example is our Christian Educators Fellowship. The first stage was actually identify who among all the churches in Hanoi City are Christian educators, and to create this kind of fellowship, this kind of community among educators. And they then organized activities for themselves to form this network of educators. And now that this network has been formed, now they are starting this year to plan how can they now serve public school educators, because public school in Vietnam is really underserved, underpaid, and really under-resourced. And that now is the heart of our Christian Educators Network, to provide value and to provide meaningful service to public educators. Well, this is kind of a summary of the 5 steps of Love Your City, how faith-based organizations can create local action. And I believe that faith communities are strategically located in every neighborhood and can quickly come to local action if they are motivated by their religious beliefs. That then changes their posture, that then helps them to establish a process so that they can partner with others who are seeking the welfare of the city together, because it's all about people, serving people. And this all aligns with our theme of this year here at WUF, that it all starts at home. There is nothing closer to home than the faith and the beliefs that we personally hold. No matter what faith you are from, or even faith in humanity, or faith in yourself, or faith in people, any kind of faith of belief is what can motivate us to lead to action locally, together, and now. And we can apply Love Your City's model to enhance community resilience, to address the pressing challenges through localized efforts now. And we can use the strengths, and we can use collaboration for effective solutions for our cities. We can promote unity across our sectors for a holistic city network. And therefore, I want to challenge everyone to become a catalyst for positive impact. And if you're interested to connect with us, my book is available on the counter over there, as well as my brochure and my business card. This is my team. I have a Vietnamese director who used to work with Samaritan Spurs, who is my executive director for Love Your City, and a Vietnamese administrator who is organizing most of what we do with Love Hanoi and then Love Your City across Vietnam. But also, I want to invite you to connect with our Faith for Cities organization that is putting up this faith pavilion here at WUF. And you can find us at our website at faithforcities.org. You can find more information about our network, and we will be posting not only our program, but also the videos of our presentations from this week on that platform. But perhaps you have some questions or comments. If I can answer them, I would love to answer them, but perhaps here, even in the room, we can answer these questions and have a discussion. Do you have any questions?
By the end, when they put the Love Hanoi on the flag, did they still remember that it was your church that founded it, or not? I mean, did it become something that they all owned at that point?
A very good question. When they put Love Hanoi on the banner, in both of the stories that I shared, do they still know if it's our church or is it something joint that's owned? So everyone knows that our church is known for Love Hanoi, and that the Protestant community in Hanoi is known for Love Hanoi. So we don't have to even say it. I mean, they know it already. But that, in fact, the multi-faith cleanup project that we did with City Police, that was the first time we were uniting as faith communities under the banner of Love Hanoi. Any other question? Yeah.
Has that changed going forward how Love Hanoi works? So I know it's been really associated with your church and the Protestant community, but now that there is this project that's brought together multiple faiths, is that indicated in the future work in a new way?
Yeah, so the question is, has that going forward now united these faith communities, and will that be a collaborative process? And so not yet. And I'm looking forward after this week, as we have are really learning how to create multi-faith platform. What I'm learning here at WUF and previous WUFs I've participated with, as well as partnering with other multi-faith platforms that I'm connected with, other organizations that do this kind of work. I really want to continue in this multi-faith collaboration in my city, now that we had this open door working with City Police, but as well as working with UN Habitat in Hanoi. In fact, after WUF10 in Abu Dhabi in 2020, that was my plan. And I already had set up with UN Habitat in Hanoi for them to host the first ever multi-faith conversation at the UN1 building in Hanoi City. And then COVID hit. And so now there's a new director, and there's been a turnover of staff, so I need to reestablish those relationships. But that is my plan, to take what we're doing here in Cairo, Egypt, and import it into Hanoi, Vietnam. Yes?
Do the projects come to you, or do you initiate projects, and what criteria or frequency?
Yeah, the question is if projects come to us, or if we initiate the projects, and how often that happens. So mostly to date it's generated by members of the faith communities, so NGOs or church members that have charity projects that start these local initiatives, often started by foreigners. Now also many initiatives are started by Vietnamese, Christian, non-Christian, whatever traditions, and we seek to partner with them. But then, like this initiative with City Police, that was the first time that a government institution initiated a project with us. And so we hope that just more doors like that will happen. Any other question? Okay, well, thanks for attending this presentation, and I'd love to talk to you right afterwards. Thank you.